Rainier Avenue Radio.
This is Tyrone with God Is, and the inspiration of gospel music also on Rainier Avenue Radio.org. We give out free food each and every Saturday from 11 to 2. And so we want you to come on out and support us. And we love on your community. And we also have a fish fry once a month. We want to raise funds, put back into the community. And so come on and support us. We need your love. And also, if you want to be connected with us, go to Rainier Avenue Radio.org, to the website, Facebook, Instagram, and God Is. And as God Is got a website, we need your help, community. So come on out and get your free food each and every Saturday it is. And so we asking for donation, whatever you feel to give from your heart to the mind. And as we doing it right here for you, go to our website and touch love and give back. And so come on by 810 23rd Avenue, Rainier Avenue Radio.org, your community radio station and inspiration of all the things we do in your community.
Yo, what's good? It's D Money, and you should definitely check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, 9 to 11 Pacific, right on Rainier Avenue Radio.
With pint-sized Patron, P-Treasy the Don. Y'all be sure to clean your mirrors as we play brand new hip-hop and R&B from locals and worldwide.
It's ID Yourself, a.k.a. Malcolm Flex. Make sure you check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, Pacific Standard Time from 9 to 11 p.m.
And to get those exclusive interviews that we be doing.
Sipping a brand new Fresh Juice every single week.
Every Wednesday, 9 to 11, Rainier Avenue Radio.
Yeah. Welcome to the coronavirus pandemic. I'll take coronavirus for 100. Fever, chills, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell. What is staying home and isolate? Correct. Coronavirus for 200. Inability to stay awake, persistent pain or pressure in chest, trouble breathing. What is seek immediate help? Correct.
Coronavirus for 500.
Crippling and potentially dead infectious disease eliminated in the United States with vaccination.
What is the polio vaccine?
Correct.
I'll take coronavirus for 700.
The Daily Double! Should I take the coronavirus vaccine? Wait. Hold up. This is not a game. It's time for serious discussions. We have coronavirus vaccines, but not everyone is comfortable taking them. Here's the facts. Based on what has been proven about vaccines for other diseases, COVID-19 vaccine may help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. Getting vaccinated also may protect people around, particularly those at greater risk for severe illness from COVID-19. We don't yet have all of the answers. Get informed, talk to your healthcare physician, and make the right decision for you. This is a message supported by the Washington State Department of Health.
Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio traffic update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio traffic update.
You're listening to Heartbeat Radio. I'm your host, Cindi Bright. Heartbeat Radio is a conversation aimed to take the pulse of corporate America. Opportunities for people of color. We're getting lost in the shuffle of change. I'm that provocateur of change. The hearts of corporate America are addressed. Access and opportunities will be accelerated for all people. Through Heartbeat Radio, you will gain a deeper understanding of what is necessary for change. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Heartbeat Radio and podcast now, too. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are kicking off Black History Month. Let's bring Joy Stanford in, my co-host, with me this evening. Good evening, Joy. Black history is American history.
Every day, all day.
Every day, all day. How are you doing this evening?
Good. Super excited. Super excited.
Yeah.
About this Elite 100 list and who we have on today.
Yeah, I am too. Look, some people are saying, we shouldn't have to wait for February to talk about Black history. But you know what? For some reason, things feel different to me this month. And I feel like our time is here. And I feel like, with watching the movement and the things that are happening across this country and the fact that it is Black women. And so I have the honor of using my platform to honor and highlight and showcase and talk about Black women who are in this movement to drive radical change across this country, radical change in corporate America, access and opportunity for all people. Let's welcome our guest tonight. We are so honored to have two of the people that are listed. Hold up. Before I do that, let me read some statistics to everybody first, because you know how I come on with my statistics, right? So,
Yes.
All right, this requires my specs. So, Black women continue to face a concrete ceiling, one at which they are slowly chipping away. In the C-suite, women of color, includes Black, Asian, and Latina, represent a mere 4%, and that's up from 3% the previous year, according to Women in the Workplace 2021 survey done by McKinsey. This is in comparison to white men, 62%, white women, 20%, and men of color, 13%. Let's be real about the conversation, because we want to have some real talk with our guest tonight about
4%.
4%.
4%.
And even though corporate America has been claiming that it is progressing diversity, the only people benefiting from diversity statistics and progress is gender, and that
That's
is
it.
contributing to white women.
That's it.
And so we need to talk about that. Let's welcome in our sisters tonight who are across this country doing this work. Out of the elite 100 women, 2 of them are coming onto the show tonight. Let's welcome in, first off, Michele Reeves. Michele Reeves. Oh my God, it's been 20 years since I've seen her. Michele Reeves is the Chief Diversity Officer, Senior Leader in Presbyterian HealthCare in New Mexico. Michele Reeves, welcome to Heartbeat Radio.
Yes. I am glad to be here tonight. Thank you for having me.
So fun to have you here and to see you. You haven't changed a bit. That beige don't age is completely working for you.
Go ahead. I got on my Black History Month too.
Yay!
All right.
I meet my co-host Joy here, who's on air with me every week having these conversations. Let's also welcome in our other sister, Darlene Slaughter. She's across the country, and she is the Chief Diversity Officer for the March of Dimes, out there doing her thing too. Hi, Darlene. Welcome to Heartbeat Radio, and it's nice to meet you on air.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I'm very excited about the conversation.
Yes.
Us too. I wrestled with where to begin. I want to give some space to you, because I want both of you to have the opportunity to talk to us about your work and what you're doing in your respective organization. I'd like to also hear from you about trends, issues, challenges, all the things that we as Black women who are falling in that 4% are facing. Michele, can we start with you and hear from you and your work at Presbyterian HealthCare?
Sure. To start off, and hello everyone. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be talking about, and I actually said this, real talk. I hope we can have some real talk this evening. I am the Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer at Presbyterian HealthCare. It is the largest healthcare system in New Mexico. We serve about a third of New Mexicans, and we are integrated. And that means we have healthcare plans and hospitals and clinics and everything that you could possibly think of. We've also had ambulances going out to the hood. So let me just tell you, we're everywhere. And there's a lot of Native Americans here, as well as people that are Hispanic. It is one of the few majority minority states. And I happen to be in the right place at the right time, knowing the right skills, because I've been doing this type of work for just about 30 years. I know beige don't age. I hear you. But about 30 years or so. And I was in the right place, right time. And we were actually just starting this work before George Floyd happened. And shortly after George Floyd happened, I had given a presentation to our CEO and others in our executive leadership team. And I said, here's what we've come up with. And I was really, really proud of Presbyterian, because even through the beginning of the pandemic, we wanted to address racism. We wanted to address some of these issues. And I gave a presentation and I said, here's where we are. We can do better. We can do better. We're a wonderful organization. Presbyterian's been around for 114 years, before New Mexico was a state. There's some history there too. 114 years they've been there. And I said, we could do better. The next day, the CEO came in and said, I want you to be the Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer. And I said, All right, I'll take that. I'll be right here.
And I'll get to work.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have any time to waste when the doors open. Walk in.
Yeah.
Walk in and do your thing, because you never know when it'll close.
I do want to talk more about the Black women in the Chief Diversity Officer roles, but let's first hear from Darlene, because we'd love to meet you. I have not met you. I know Michele. Michele and I worked together 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I've been keeping up with her, and I think her with me, and so it's just nice to see her. But we don't know you, Darlene, so let's hear from you. We're happy to have you here and highlight you and your work.
Thank you, and I have to send out a big thank you to Michele, because she called me and she was like, "What are you doing Wednesday night at 10 p.m. on the East Coast?" And I was like, "What do you need me to do?" And I was like, "Oh my God, this is fantastic!" But so I have to thank Michele for the invitation as well. I currently am the Chief Diversity, Inclusion, and Engagement Officer at the March of Dimes, and I've been at the March of Dimes now for 3 years. And as you know, March of Dimes has been in existence for about 85 years now, and we were part of an organization that helped to come up with a vaccine for polio with children who had birth defects who were born. And we've moved from birth defects to prematurity to really looking at health equity for all moms and babies. But in this country, we have a crisis for Black women and maternal health. We have a crisis, and Black women die 3 to 5 times the rate of white women. And it's not just Black women, but women of color.
Yes.
And so, my role actually kind of blossomed as well around George Floyd. I actually started in the organization as a chief people officer, which is very much on the HR side, but my heart and my passion is really on the diversity side. And when the murder of George Floyd happened, one of the things that was very, you could just see it, is managers didn't know what to do, in terms of what to say, how to do it, what to say to the people. And I was like, everybody just move out of the way. I got this. I got this. And so we started a whole series of courageous conversations. And it was the time to talk about race and racism in this country. And to not dance around the conversations of race and racism in this country. And so from that, it's like uplifting diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. So we do the work inside of the March of Dimes, but we also do the work outside of the March of Dimes for our families and our communities and corporations. So I've been at this role for a very long time as well. I became a chief diversity officer at Fannie Mae back in 2008. And it's just, I look at it as a calling more so than as a job. It's just what you do. It is very much a job that you minister to people.
Yeah.
You minister to people. So it's a fantastic opportunity for anybody who's thinking about going into the role. I just believe it's a fantastic opportunity, and it's so important and so needed.
Let me ask this question. You guys know, Michele knows this about me. I'm always the disruptor. So let me just ask this question. Why did it take George Floyd's murder to
revolutionize
or open up corporate America's eyes to addressing this issue? That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, when I looked at the list, and this has been my experience too, it's Black women that are now being tapped into these CDO roles, Chief Diversity Officer roles. And historically, the Chief Diversity Officer roles are the ones that have been underfunded, under-resourced, and blamed for the lack of corporate America progress. So when Michelle's talking about real talk, we're going to go there. But let's start with the first part of it, which is what took so long from your perspective for why did it take the murder of a man in broad daylight that we had to fight for, social justice to be held in the court system? Why did it take that from your perspective with your experiences in corporations, but, albeit as business, so business to start to make these moves?
You know what? I would say a pandemic. A pandemic. it took a pandemic. I think very much people had nowhere to go. And so TV was front and center 24/7. And as many times as we've seen Black men, Black people killed, at the hands of police for a variety of reasons. So I'm not saying they were, all. I think this was the first time for me. This was the first time when you actually saw a Black man dying and you saw a white man having no remorse of action that he was doing at the same time.
Yeah.
Usually you don't see both faces at the same time, right? So I think this time we saw for the first time, and many people saw for the first time who are not a part of the Black community said, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is happening. And the Black community was kind of like, where you been? What you been doing, right? And so I think it was the realization of this is real. These are real conversations that people had the luxury of not paying attention to. And because of a pandemic, you had to pay attention to it.
That's a good answer. That's a real answer.
That's my anscer. So,
all right, Miss Michele.
I have a addition. So I do think the pandemic was a catalyst because everything was on heightened alert, right? Everything. Everybody was working from home. You were doing different stuff. You were working in your pajamas. What the heck? You were doing all that stuff. But Brene Brown has a wonderful quote, and she says, where there is perfection, there is shame.
Oh, yeah.
And I do believe that there was some shame going on. They were like, oh, snap. We don't even have a chief diversity. We need to do something. I do believe people were on the phone and they were like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm gonna fix that. And they did. They started to fix it. Now it'd be interesting to see like the follow-up between the time George Floyd happened and today to see who's continuing, who's still talking the talk. There's a lot of people in the news. You're like, didn't you put out this big letter about racism? What are you doing? Right. So the more the performative type of diversity and inclusion work. But I do think there was some shame going on. And they needed to do something different. So they did.
In the news today or yesterday, I'm pivoting slightly, but I'm going to bring it home here in a second. In the news, we are watching corporate infrastructure, corporate white supremacist culture, hierarchy, and how those systems work. We are watching it unfold every single day practically. But this week's latest deal is in the NFL, and the performative nature of accidentally tweeting or texting the Black man that you put into the candidate pool, pretending that he's actually somebody that you're looking at considering for a job, when the entire time you're just giving it to one of your boys. That's real. That's what's going on in corporations. That's Michele, when you knew me, those are the kind of things I was tackling back then about performative. How do we progress people? What are your thoughts about, the performative nature, and whether, Michele, you were hitting at it that, okay, they know they need to do something. Are they actually doing it? And when you look at the McKinsey study that I referenced, one could question that that's actually even happening. It's happening. And so what are your thoughts about that? I mean, I want to be respectful to your employers as you talk about this, but I also think
these opinions are mine. They will not be Presbyterians. But let me tell you, I haven't talked to one chief diversity officer yet that is going yippee skippy every day. I actually have a network of chief diversity officers that we just hanging on, because we know we're trying to make things stick and make things work. And there's, it reminds me of when you're sitting at at a dinner table, and you want, and your grandma wants you to eat the beans, and you eat the beans because she told you to. And then you're kind of like, well, they're kind of tasty because, grandma got some spice in there. I'll keep eating them. But the next time you're at the dinner table, do you want the beans again? or will grandma have to be standing there? And I do think we have that kind of like chief diversity officer's got to be standing there at the table, kind of looking over you in order for things to really happen. I wonder, the day I leave, the day I'm not there, the day I'm sick, do they remember that there are brown people in the company? Do they remember to do those things, to look out? And so I feel like we're kind of there. It's not fake, but it's not in your, in your bones.
It's
so yeah, I don't know what it's not quite performative. It's it's not like I'm checking the box. It's just that I really don't know. Maybe it's back to that other thing. I don't know what to do. So I'm still trying to figure it out. And Darlene, we had this discussion the other day. You're like, I don't know why these people are asking me the same question they asked me 3 years ago. Why? So that's what I'm saying. It's like you got to be at the table, and you're still trying to get them to understand what I explained implicit bias. Now let me do it one more time. Right? And that's where, I get to the other side, because I think about ministry, Darlene. I was like, you know how they say in church that your misery is your ministry?
Yes.
I was like, is it our misery? Are we supposed, or Black women just, we the holders, we hold up the world, we get the family together, we make the jam. We do everything.
Yeah.
And this is part of what we're supposed to do in the world.
Do you, and either one of you, because where Cindi and I live, particularly me,
no, me too.
It's performative, and it is checking the box. And I'm talking outside of y'all's industry. I'm talking, education. I live in a town where our school board continues to say racist things, and we call them out. And then people want to say, oh, no, they're not racist. Yes, they are. And at what point do we keep going? I guess that's my question. Should we keep going? I personally, it's traumatizing to keep going to the school board and going, stop saying that. Yeah. I need you all to look at all my kids. When I say my kids, that's all the kids in the district at every single school. Do we keep going? Do I keep going? It's traumatic for me. I will tell both of you, I'm tired. And to even just talk about it, it makes me want to cry. What do I do? Do I keep encouraging my white friends to keep going? It's traumatic to them. They're like, we have went and talked to them so many times. So talk to me about that. Do we keep going? Do we keep pushing? If we do we change up what we're doing?
I have a thought about that, Joy. Before Darlene and Michelle come in, I'm just going to add something to Joy's question, because this is a great question. Do we keep going? Because, my audience knows, and I know Michelle knows this, I'm a former HR executive. I spent many years in 3 major companies here in the Seattle area. I could make a strong argument that it's not the chief diversity officer roles that have the power to change what's going on in business. The people who have the power to change what's going on in business are the people that run profit and loss for a business. And they are not putting Black women in profit and loss situations, because to do what you're asking, Joy, requires a Black woman leader who has power to change the trajectory of a business based on her ability to hire, fire, change, and make all the things necessary that need to happen.
True. And influence people.
And influence people. Darlene, what do you think about that?
I think you're right.
I believe that is true. But I also believe that the role that I have is very influential. It could, so I may not have, that P&L where I can, bring in, but I do. But I still do, because I have a huge network. And people, what I say to people is, if I'm not in the room, because people will go into the whole, it's about diversity of thought, right? That's where the conversation goes when, when we run out of answers. It's like, oh, it's about diversity of thought. And my response to that is, well, if I'm not in the room, then you don't know what I'm thinking, right? So because the diversity of thought usually means everybody at the table looks the same and I'm different. And so I can be influential by being very vocal or not being vocal, because people will say, well, what do you think? And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not the one running the company. So what do you think? I like the role because you can be provocative. And you have to, there's a term that I learned in graduate school, and it was called a conscious use of self. Ooh. And you have to know yourself and how you use yourself as a change agent, right? So I can be very influential, and I can really, and I will tell you where power is in organizations. Yes, power is at the top, but power is also at lower levels in the organization. And when you can give lower employees or employees who are throughout the organization a voice,
oh yeah,
and they start to rise their voices, because employees have a lot of power. And when you help them understand the power that they have, then they begin to carry that message, and you get to sit back and say, see, I'm just proud of all of the folks who are doing some great things. So we made some significant changes in the workplace based on some of the things the employees wanted, not necessarily coming from the top, but going, from the bottom up. So
that's exciting. Well, we're doing that this year too, trying to be not your standard employee resource group. We actually want to flip the script a little bit and not be just about identity, but to be about intersectionality and issues that are real to us, gender equity and racial equity, and some of those other ones. And so we they are chomping at the bit to be heard, and a vehicle to have it. And so I think you're right, Darlene. When employees start to feel the power, they're like, wait a minute. We'll do something, which I think that's the fun part of the job. And we actually have that in our vision. We empower people, right?
Yes.
Which means we're sharing that power, not giving it away. We're sharing it with them. And when you get that and you really give it to, or you're able to share it with your employees, boy, that's fun.
And so power, let's talk about power, because people hear me talk about racism and I use two words that are attached to power. One is access, access and power. Those are the two tenets of racism. And so when we, what you're talking about, Michelle, is empowering people. I think another term I would use is sharing power. In a business, in an organization where people have a voice and are able to elevate that voice and start to help create, it's grassroots kind of change is what you're talking about. Do you both, either of you or both of you, see grassroots movements and change and voice happening in your respective organizations?
Oh yeah. So for us, we're in New Mexico. And yes, there are Black people in New Mexico. 3%.
3%.
3%. That's about 60,000 people, though. And so it's more than you think, right? And because of the way we're structured, you get to see more of them. But I really do think that we see it because we have events, we have different places where employees can get together and share. I think what's powerful is when they see each other. Boy, that's a wonderful thing, because it's like, wait a minute, I see me. And there is something really powerful about being seen and being heard, and then really being valued for what you're saying. So I'm the one that takes the value of what they say and spreads the love. And I think, Darlene, it's what you're talking about, right? You get to be that influential piece. So that's the good part of the job. That's the part where I feel like it was like, no, let me just tell you, I just talked to 700 employees and here's what they said. Like, oh, it's important. Yeah. And because we need them. I mean, y'all have heard of the Great Resignation, right? It's real. We don't have a lot of people running around.
Darlene, were you going to add something to that?
I would say this year or last year, we started our employee resource groups for the first time in the organization. In 85 years have March Dimes had employee resource groups, right? So that's powerful in itself. And it was really powerful when we brought, one group of employees together who were all the same, from the same community, who had never seen themselves all together. They had never been in a meeting all together at the same time, because we're across the nation. And so in many of the work groups, you may have a person of color, but it may be the only person of color in that team. So it was so powerful to watch them be in amazement for the first time of seeing each other. And it was one of these moments where, you kind of think, well, we're going to all get on Zoom at the same time. We're on Zoom all the time anyway. But to see them look at each other and say, I've talked to you, but I've never actually seen you. And oh my gosh, I didn't know that all this talent was here and all these people who look like me were here. So that started a movement. And, we also have an LGBT group, and that group has been extremely powerful in making change in the organization and making safe spaces for our employees, to the point where we changed our logo during Pride Month. And some people were a little bit like, are we only doing this because it's performative, or why are we doing this? And it was like, no, this is huge. This is huge for the organization, because it was because of the employee's voice that happened. And then we continue to build on that. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, we're going to take a quick station identification break, and then we're going to come back. When we come back, I want to pick up on the systems that are at play inside of organizations, and I want to talk about the only one syndrome. So let's take a quick identification break, and we'll be right back.
Half that up in Saks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not meeting Mrs. Jones in that cafe for a chat and nothing else, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Dealing with COVID-19 is uncharted territory, and everyone has different challenges. People may feel anxious, down, or overwhelmed. For some, these feelings can lead to changes in sleep patterns, an increased use of alcohol or drugs, or withdrawing from the people around them. If you know someone who's having a hard time coping, you can help by reaching out to talk and listen. To learn more about how you can help someone in need, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-TALK. Brought to you by the state of Washington.
Hi, I'm Mac McGregor, the host of the You Can Make a Difference show, which airs live every Friday at 12 noon PT time. On the You Can Make a Difference show, we shine a spotlight on people who are doing amazing things to make a positive difference in our communities and in our world. We talk about what inspired them to do the work and what inspires them to keep going, how they got their start, and how you can, if it inspires you, plug into their work. We can all do something that makes a difference. So tune in every Friday at noon to the You Can Make a Difference show with Mac McGregor.
Greetings. This is your host, DJ Neftali, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. The best DJ in the Seattle area. You can catch me every Monday at 8 p.m. on YouTube. Like I said, this is DJ Neftali, best reggae in Seattle, Washington, the best radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Come on, right?
Black Dollar Day's King County Reparations Project cordially invites you to Remembering Black Wall Street, featuring Dr. Phil Armstrong.
Hello, Seattle and surrounding communities. I'm Phil Armstrong. I'm the director of the Greenwood Rising Black Wall Street History Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Please join me in Seattle this coming Saturday, February the 5th at Washington Hall at 5 p.m. for Remembering Black Wall Street. I look forward to engaging with everyone, whether you are joining us physically or virtually, for these important, courageous conversations.
For more information, visit eventbrite.com, Remembering Black Wall Street.
Rainier Avenue Radio.world is your 24/7 digital media hub. Tune in at Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and TuneIn apps.
Half that up in Saks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo.
Welcome back to Heartbeat Radio and Podcast, along with my co-host Joy Stanford. Tonight we are celebrating the beginning of Black History Month, and as usual, we are thrilled to highlight Black women and the Black women work, the voice of the Black women, and all that is going on. We have two exciting guests with us tonight: Michele Reeves from Presbyterian HealthCare in New Mexico. We have Darlene Slaughter from the March of Dimes, both holding senior executive leadership jobs in diversity work, making progress for that mere 4% of Black women progress that is being made. So I want to pick back up because I love the real talk and conversation. I want to dig into systems, and let me talk about how, let me just set the stage for this. In business, in corporate America, many of the systems that are built, the performance management system, the performance improvement plans, the way that compensation is distributed and given, where wealth is made in organizations. These are all systems that have been built that are harming Black people. And in my book, I hope you both got a chance to read my book. I actually say that the performance system is the 911 system. It's the equivalent of the woman standing in Central Park calling the cops on the man watching a bird, because it's a system that has been put in place, from my perspective, to try to force perfection of people that we can't be who they want us to be because we're not them. And so I'm just curious, because my work focuses on systems and how you go about disrupting them and how you go about rebuilding what is necessary to help Black people rise in business and attain earning power and so forth. Can both of you speak to the systems in your organization? Are those being looked at? Is any work happening around that? Or maybe give us a landscape of how you see this issue that I'm talking about.
I'll let
You
Michele.
want to start, Darlene?
I'll let Michele take that.
Is that too heavy?
We didn't land on planet rock. No, so it's complicated. It just feels
It is.
Right? There are the system you can see.
Yes.
The system you will never see.
Mm-hmm.
And the system you will never see is the conversation that happened somewhere in somebody's office. It's very hard to infiltrate that system. So we found a way to infiltrate the one you see, right? We changed the performance system. We kind of uprooted what we had, and took a look at, okay, how do we actually talk to people every day, and did like a different kind of system that didn't have a number attached. It's called Standout. And it is every week you get to talk. What do you love? What do you loathe? What are your goals? What does that mean? And it's not really attached to a lot of that 1 year annual performance review. So outside system, right? But then the inside system, this is, well, who got promoted last week and didn't, wait a minute, that wasn't part of the where was that? And so I know that, there's a formal side, but there's this informal side that still happens. And I do believe that part of the system is harder to, bust a move and try to get in there. I am reminded of Maya Angelou at this moment. So Maya Angelou says, only equals can be friends. And I put it a step further, only friends are building those systems underneath. Yeah. And so that's the part that's really, so it's complicated.
Just a little bit.
Darlene, what's been happening with you?
So, I would agree. It's complicated. And I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle, because I have been in the system, in the formal system and in the informal system. Then you begin to educate people on how to work the system. So you start dropping nuggets in terms of, okay, let's have a conversation about, when you're going in to get that promotion and you're not talking strategically and they're not giving you the job because you're talking operational, but they want you to talk strategic. So let me show you how to talk strategic when you go into the job, right? So some of the systems are changing in terms of giving people feedback, having managers, talking more frequently. So not waiting for a whole year to go by before you say, oh, by the way, you didn't do a good job. And so we're training, or we are building a muscle to have managers understand what coaching is, but we're also building the muscle with the employees to start asking questions, more questions than, just you've got to advocate for yourself as well. And so I think that's sort of how you fix the system, but you're right. I mean, it is a system. And we are not necessarily front and center. I remember, and this was not the job I have now, but another job. And one of the managers said to me, it kind of dawned on him because I was in HR and we were doing compensation, and at the end of the compensation cycle, it's the HR person had the last say. Like, okay, we just need to smooth these numbers out a little bit. And he realized, he said, you have a lot of power in terms of what happens at the end of the compensation process. And I said, yeah, because there's a whole lot of people taking care of a whole lot of friends that don't look like my friends, And so you have to level set that sometimes. And I think it's what do you do in the formal system and what do you do in the informal system, but everything comes out in the way it needs to come out, right? So you're not making bad decisions, but you are
oh, I love that, Marlell.
Advocate
for yourself and document your accomplishment.
Yeah.
I did not do that. So that is great advice.
Yeah.
I'm going to go deeper on this topic. I'm going to go deeper.
Yeah.
So y'all need to brace yourself.
I feel it coming, Cindi. Go ahead. Bring it on.
Let's put that comment back up that Gwen Rose, one of our listeners, just said. She said
the other one, Daniel.
The other one where she said the informal side is destroying people and it's complicated, which causes pain. I'm gonna go here's where I'm gonna go with this, because I asked the question about the formal systems, and Michelle, you brought out the informal things that are going on. And a few minutes ago or before break, we were talking about where power lies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go deeper into this in my book too. Where power lies in a business is in the middle management ranks, from my perspective. And the middle management ranks, and the reason why I say that is because the middle management controls what's going up, right, to the higher levels.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunities to go up become far and fewer in between to excel. So that becomes a much more cutthroat, competitive nature of behaviors that go on there. And the middle management is also controlling who's coming in the front door to the business, because that's a director level job. And that's where the managers are reporting to and getting approvals for on who they hire. There's a lot of power in that middle management ranks. And the people who are populating the middle management ranks are white women. Their gender is progressing diversity. And so when you think about the historical context around what white women do to Black women, and when you think about the fact that opportunity to go above that is even fewer, I could make a strong argument that the people who are destroying our lives are the same people who are out in the streets perpetuating and taking Kyle Rittenhouse to the shootings to start killing Black people. It's all the same behavior. It just is. And so, I'm putting that out there because I said I was going to go there. And you said you wanted real talk. That's real talk about what is happening to Black lives, Black women's lives in corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll pause there and see what your response is to that.
Well, tell the truth, shame the devil. Mm-hmm. You hit it. I mean, it's our organization is 75% women. That's what's in healthcare. 75% women.
Yeah.
Okay, we reflect New Mexico, right? We're in there, but that's a lot of women, right? And a lot of women haven't learned to support each other, and definitely women of color getting support is few and far between. So white women have a lot of support, and in different ways, but I think that you've got something there in terms of what holds us back. Boy, I don't want to go to the Supreme Court justice, but little just ways they have of depending on where you sit, and the type of information that you keep and the type of information that you don't keep. There's a lot of history about that. And I think if we look at our history, you can see it follow us right on up to today, because I think it's still happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when the category women and minorities was made, that women and minorities made white women be a part of that diversity conversation. And it feels like it's safe and you're also doing something. Right. Because when you look at, we need to build leadership in organizations, and we need to look at women. People can sit back and say, well, we have a women's leadership program and, we're doing all this for women. But then when you look inside of those circles, the leadership programs, it's mostly white women, but that counts because it's women and minorities, right? And so the names are changing because the times are changing, but it's still, from a gender standpoint, that's who is getting a lot of, the push and the help and the support, even though they don't think that they are.
They don't say that they are.
Okay.
Yes.
They don't say it.
Yes.
But they are.
Yes.
Darlene, you mentioned at the beginning, you're having courageous conversations at your organization. Can we really have courageous conversations? I worked at a very large healthcare company like Michelle's here in Washington, shall go unnamed at this time, and for 10 years. And as much as I want to say they tried to do that, I don't know where those conversations were happening. Because when I look back, I was never a part of any courageous conversation. Yeah. And in fact, someone had their thumb on my back.
Yeah.
For my career. And it was a white woman. And there were allies, I had allies, but can we really have courageous conversations in that corporate / nonprofit world?
Well, we can in my nonprofit world.
Yay!
Yay, Darlene.
So, and I've worked in corporate and I worked at nonprofit, and I do think this year what was happening in society made it more possible. So okay. I won't say that it was possible, before. But I do think this time, with everything that was happening, right, one thing after the other, it made it much, much easier for it to happen. I also think, and our organization is the same, where it's 75% women, and mostly white women. And as we talk about the health of moms and babies, we're looking across the board, but we also, again, like I said, we have a crisis in the Black community. And so my courageous conversation is, well, how is that working for you? And so you're going to the Black community and you're not from the Black community. And if you've never had a conversation about race and racism and you don't even know what to say, how are you doing your job?
It does not work.
Well, right. And so
you cannot build relationships like that.
Right.
Is either of you, is your organizations run by a person of color? Either of you?
Mine is, yes.
Yours
Mine is not.
Yes. Okay. I'm just curious about that.
The other thing is, what's the makeup of BIPOC people in your organizations or boards?
So we're about 75% white. The remaining are people of color for all the groups. So for all the groups. So a small number. Our board is pretty good. Some people would say not, but it's pretty diverse across the board. The CEO is diverse, and very supportive. very supportive. And so that's the other thing. The CEO is also very supportive of the courageous conversations.
That does help.
That's important.
That helps. Yes.
That's important.
How about you, Michelle?
We are, like I said, we're a majority minority state, and we actually reflect the numbers of the state. So it's about 30% white, and everybody else is brown. So, or some shade of brown. So we have been able to do that well, and I think that works all the way up until you get to like a senior level, and then it flips.
A position of power, you mean?
Yes. What I call a key decision maker.
Mm-hmm.
If you're driving a business unit, multiple teams, then it flips. And so that is what I'm working on, what we're trying to change. And our best bet is the pipeline. My mantra all year has been move the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Move the middle.
Yes. I have a similar one, Michelle, except I say it's clean the middle.
Throw out the trash.
I think there's a lot of
it's like that too. So I understand. I work for an organization that's nonprofit, and both the boards, after many decades, because it's an historically white environmental nonprofit, that space has always been white men.
Mm-hmm.
But now both of our boards are 60 and 50% BIPOC folks.
Right. Yeah.
And our staff is slowly, so
Michelle,
they're doing the work. So
Michelle, is Presbyterian a nonprofit or a not-for-profit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So both. So that's always an interesting conversation. It's an interesting perception, because the nonprofits who are serving most BIPOC communities, that's what many nonprofits are set up to do, tend to be a whole lot more open to conversations, and at least not having you be maybe not. All right, go ahead. I see, Darlene. I see your earring going.
Right.
Go ahead. Going, Cindi.
Go ahead and comment about that. I was going to compare it to corporations, but I'm open to your thoughts about that.
Yeah. Go ahead. Well, I would say, here's what I would say. I think in the nonprofit space, people, you are mission oriented, right? And you work in community, and many times you work on the ground, and that people believe that because it's mission oriented, because they are working in community, they get it, and they don't. So that's where it's sometimes harder to get people to realize, like, just because that's your job doesn't mean that you know how to build relationships in communities of color, or that you are talking to people of color in a respectful way. That's just the work you're doing, but this work could be done so much better and so much differently. And sometimes you do have to say is, I think we look at the people we serve as recipients of our products and services, but never look at them as adding to, like, a donor and or a board member, right? Mm-hmm. So we go to you to say, let me help you, but we never say, you come to my table and be a part of what I'm doing. And therefore you get boards and organizations that do not reflect the communities that they're serving. And so, I get to pat myself on the back, but I never bring that group of people inside my organization to be a part of my organization.
Is that,
and that's
fueled? Go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say, now that's not true in New Mexico. We actually have done an incredible job, and I will give all the kudos to really looking to our community. And in fact, last year we brought two people of color from the community onto our board.
Nice.
And it was it's great because they were right in the middle of it. Now, granted, community is spread out here, and it's a little bit smaller and it's a little bit different, and New Mexico is a little magical and mystical. So it's not like we're spread across the USA. We actually have a contained state to be in, but it was a concerted and continues to be a concerted effort to be part of the community. And I think it's because we've been positioned that way I don't know if all organizations, I mean, obviously Darlene was saying not all organizations are like that, but I would give Presbyterian a big high five for, really wanting to be and do part of it. And we had a New Mexico, actually a public health day yesterday, and there were 300 people on the call. Everybody is coming together to figure out how to fix the disparities in the state.
Nice.
And it was really, really, it was heartwarming. And at the beginning, Presbyterian got a shout out. They're like, hey, you've been doing this since 2015 and you've been out in our communities and you've given millions. And I thought, I was really very proud at that moment of the work that we've done. Not everybody's got it right, but people are doing it. So I think I think not-for-profit has a special place in the world. But to me, it's very different than my corporate experiences.
Yes.
Cindy,
I think that's all of us.
We're with the Giants and running with the Giants some years ago. And up until 3 years ago, I was even with a very large corporation. And it was very different. So you don't have as much money to throw around, but there's a lot of heart in nonprofits.
Absolutely. But some smaller ones still have those systems like Cindi was talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That are not working for people of color, especially employees of color.
Yeah. We have, I think one of the things that I noticed in the nonprofit space, in the ones that I've worked in, we want people on the boards at certain levels, right? Because being on the board also means you bring in revenue to the organization, right? So then you automatically say, who is that can do that? So you go to your corporations and you go to the highest levels in the corporation, which are where white men are. So you end up having, 90% of your board members, and we have local boards, right? 90% of your board members are white men because we are thinking about it just from a dollar standpoint, not necessarily from, is that the right makeup? So again, you have white men. The majority of your board members are white men. You have a crisis in Black communities. And is that working? Because the board has a lot of power as well, right? So it's how do we reframe who we need on our boards and how do we diversify our boards in a way that really works for the organization and stop thinking that because I'm a woman of color, I don't have money to give to a board.
Amen.
Right.
There's another piece to that I hear often out here on the Seattle area. Michelle said you have a 3% Black population. We have a 5% out here. Black women are tapped to do everything.
Yes.
And so every time something comes up, we're getting phone calls to do stuff for free. And so what's starting to happen, or at least a trend or comments that I pick up, is that Black women don't have the capacity to serve in another capacity where they're not being compensated and where they have to come in and educate white men on racism when they have to spend their 9 to 7 jobs educating white men on racism. And so there are some interesting things starting to pop up around here. There's an organization out here. It's a not-for-profit. It's a credit union who has decided with their staff that when they hire people for a job, when they're asking you to do 2, 3, and 4 other things, they've set up an internal compensation structure so that people are starting to get extra cash to be able to do that. And I think that's a good thought process for board seats because the boards, the nonprofits that are serving our communities, it's what we're doing anyhow. And so I'm just throwing that out for listeners and people who are a part of this system to start thinking about different ways of bringing diversification onto boards of directors where power is, where decisions are made, and think about ways of funding, paying people for their time and expertise to come in and serve in that capacity. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
I would.
Amen.
Yeah.
I think that'll be a changing outcome for a lot of nonprofits. And so, I just looked at the clock and I was like, I knew this was going to be the quickest hour. Because bring your sisters on to talk and you start having these real talk about the work. I just want to give a heartfelt thank you to the both of you. I know it's late in your hoods right now, and I know it's 10 o'clock at night and 11 o'clock at night for you. Thank you for taking the opportunity tonight, uncompensated, to come on to my show tonight. Come on to my show tonight and talk to our audience and educate people on the work that you're doing and what is necessary for change. I'm really grateful to have the both of you here. To our audience who joined us tonight, all the comments I was reading in the feed, thank you for your participation. I hope you all learned something from this. I hope you take this back into your respective organizations, share the show, and let's help drive progress for Black women. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Darlene and Michelle, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Yep. Still I rise.
Still I
rise. Still I rise.
Black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black.